Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Fran here, obviously, with the deadline stream. Let's just have a look at the comments. Obviously, Soldier Boy's already started with Fran. Bowen to Zaha or Bowen to Rashford? Look, I actually personally think that Bowen to Rashford is potentially a better punt than Bowen to Zaha. Because I think it does free up cash, and ultimately Zaha still has a rather poor next week fixture. And we've already seen that this Southampton team have been able to keep the score sheet quite low with most teams. So I kind of like the potential of Rashford because when I'm just watching United right now, he's actually taking a lot of shots per game. He's not the most clinical of players, obviously, but I do think it actually is a better punt this week specifically. A lot of people actually are thinking about moving out of Zaha, even though this is on paper a great game, because of the situations with Southampton's defense as well. But yeah, as I said, just prefer the Rashford punt myself. Hey, Notorious, nice to see you as well. Pleasure to see you guys. I haven't actually been able to stream because my Wi-Fi wasn't working for a long time, around 2 to 3 weeks now. So I was using personal hotspot the whole time just to make videos to you guys, but I definitely couldn't live stream. So I'm pretty happy to do that. Did Haaland travel? I don't have news for that, unfortunately. Um, what we do know is that Pep said that all the options are open to us, and I think actually the most likely scenario is that Haaland will not play, and worst case scenario, I think he comes off the bench if they really need a goal. It does seem like a Julian Alvarez game for me. I think it's actually a little bit safer to just put your captaincy on someone else. But I'd still obviously stick Haaland onto your team as a starter. What I have obviously is Webster coming off the bench and then Solanke coming off the bench because Solanke's also got a very similar situation to Haaland himself. And I think both managers will probably practice a little bit of caution there when it comes to our players in FPL. Start one of Andreas or Skamaka. I'd probably start Andreas to be honest. I think Andreas has just been in great form lately. There's no real reason to go Skamaka. You could be, dealing with a situation where maybe Antonio starts. Obviously, Bowen actually not being fit that does mean that potentially you could even see Antonio and Skamaka play sometimes because we do also see Moyes sometimes play kind of a hybrid formation where there's two strikers, right? Whether he just plays a flat 4-4-2. That hasn't actually been the case as of late. We usually just still see the standard 4-3-3 or some sort of variation of the back three. But I'd still prefer Andreas. I mean, the matchup is a lot better, and at least it's Everton away from home, which is good. Yeah, using hotspot is commitment. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I've got a decent data package, but I had to get an upgrade on that. Yeah, nice to see you, Henry. First bench, Bailey or Cresswell? Look, I'd probably actually first bench. I'd first bench Bailey to be honest. I don't really see Cresswell keeping the clean sheet. So in my opinion, I think you're gonna gamble against, let's say, just Newcastle defense. And frankly, I don't think there's a huge problem with that. We saw Aston Villa very comfortably dispatch Brentford. I'm still hoping Newcastle keep a clean sheet, but as you can see, my defense is still quite poor this week, especially if Aston Villa look rather good, especially when I Emery coming in. Should I transfer Trenton and captain him? I wouldn't captain him. Would I transfer him? Um, it really depends on who you're transferring in, right? I think if you're doing something like Cancelo to Trent, I would definitely sidestep that move. If you're doing something like a budget defender into Trent, or let's say one of the Chelsea defenders into Trent, fair enough. Not exactly the player I would captain this week because this Liverpool defense has been very poor. If you look at the underlying statistics in the Nottingham Forest game, I don't even think that was a surprise that Nottingham Forest scored. And frankly, Nottingham Forest have been struggling to score versus most teams. So if you look at the West Ham game too, around 2.4 xg conceded in both games, which just shows you the level of the Liverpool defense at this moment in time. Mostly just Alisson heroics. Would you sell Firmino this week? Potentially. If I wanted to go for a Jesus punt, I probably would go for that punt. Would I go for a Darwin punt from Firmino? Probably not. I don't think I'm too comfortable with that. We've seen already plenty of situations where these Liverpool forwards actually play around 60, 70 minutes. Then the other forward who comes in is able to score within 20, 30. I'm not so tempted by that. But I think with Jesus, you've got probably a higher ceiling there, given he's probably going to get around 88 minutes versus Nottingham Forest at the very minimum. Thank you, Soldier Boy. Saka or Salah as captain? Look, I've personally got Salah as captain myself. Um, But whether you want to go Saka captain is interesting. I think Saka's ownership is quite low as well. He probably has all the intangibles that Salah has in this Leeds game. The question, of course, is whether you actually think that Saka will be the outlet scoring today. Most of the chances for Arsenal actually do fall towards Jesus, whereas I think most of the chances towards Liverpool actually fall in a mix towards Salah and Darwin. Darwin obviously has better underlying stats, but I think Salah clearly has also better underlying stats than Saka. I'd probably go with a Salah captaincy today, but I really wouldn't mind you going for a Saka captaincy because personally I viced him myself. I have a similar team, but I have Firmino instead of Darwin, 0.6 in the bank, and a free transfer. Look, I'd probably roll then if you have a similar team. What's the best 8.4? Because I've actually taken a free transfer to go from Zaha to Saka. Whereas I imagine in your situation, you're probably already owning Saka. So if that's the case, I probably would just roll. What's the best 8.4 million or below forward? I mean, let's have a think about this. A lot of people have been talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I really just can't back it for now. I want to see a little bit more before I move into Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think Mitrovic actually has a fantastic game this week. But if we're talking about, let's say, the player who's projected to do the absolute best over this 3-game week run, look, I'd probably actually say Jesus is still the best for me in this scenario here, as long as he doesn't get a card. But obviously, there's a chance that he does get a card. So for me, the safest forward is potentially actually either Wilson or Darwin, I think, because I think Darwin will play these games. He doesn't seem injured. We saw him play obviously in the Champions League. I think he's got the ceiling there. He doesn't have the cards, and I still think he's got a higher ceiling than Firmino. Mitrovic obviously is lovely. I imagine you still have Mitrovic in your team, but obviously City and United are very, very tough games. I wonder if an Arsenal triple up is worth it. So I mean, look, that Chelsea game is probably telling you that it's not worth it to go for Arsenal. But then you've got Wolves again, and Wolves, frankly, have been terrible as of late. So it's up to you. I think obviously the Man City triple up is absolutely necessary, but everyone seems to have that already. Liverpool, it's a tough one because a lot of great teams have a bad game week 15. So you have Liverpool versus Tottenham. I really think Tottenham will probably just park the bus. It might actually end up being a game where it's like 1-1 or something like that. I think that's exactly what we saw last season at Anfield. As far as Arsenal versus Chelsea, I think that could be definitely high scoring. We've seen a lot of high scoring Arsenal versus Chelsea games. Last season, it was a little bit different because there were a lot of defensive injuries for Chelsea, and actually Azpilicueta had a terrible game. So I would be quite scared in this scenario because this Chelsea team definitely do look a little bit more improved from the defensive point of view. I would probably still be happy with 2 Arsenal at this point in time. The reason why I've not gone for an Arsenal defender is because, yeah, I'm worried about that Chelsea game. I can't see the point of bringing a defender for 1 week only for Nottingham Forest. Thank you so much, Notorious, for the donation. Really appreciate it. You've been supporting the stream from early on. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much, by the way. Really, really appreciate it. You like Wilson? Yeah, I agree. I like Wilson. Mount to Saka for free. Yeah, definitely would make that move. Just simply because Mount's rotatable, and then you've got Saka who's on penalties. But yeah, shout out once again to Notorious. Thank you so much, Rizal. 2 free transfers: Robbo plus Almiron or Shaw plus Rashford. I would actually probably go for Robbo plus Almiron. It's tough though, actually, because I actually like Almiron plus potentially United defender. I think that could be a better punt. I'm not so high on the Liverpool defense. I actually would quite like Rashford plus something like yeah. It's tough there actually because I don't love Shaw right now. I still think Dalot is better than Shaw as an option. Defensively speaking. I just think when you look at the overall build-up of United, he's actually getting more chances. Now, obviously, Shaw might be arguably a better crosser, but maybe you're actually priced out. No, you're not priced out of Shaw. I'd still probably go Dalot over Shaw, and then maybe I'd go Dalot Rashford. Yeah, Dalot is definitely better for bonus. If you just watch the way he plays, he just creates so many more crosses in the game, which actually uplifts his ceiling when it comes to bonus. And defensively, honestly, Dalot has improved a lot this season. So we already see him make a couple tackles per game. Now, I'm not saying he's a good defender, but obviously for an FPL point of view, I'd probably actually just pick Dalot over Shaw. Start Dyer or Cancelo. Absolutely start Cancelo. I don't think that's even a question. Do you need Saka if you have Jesus? I don't think anyone needs Saka. Frankly, I could have rolled this week, right? I could have just gone for Zaha because Zaha himself is a great fixture. Do we need Saka? Probably not. I'm going to go into some Twitter questions for now, so let's have a look at that. So Anis is thinking of using the wild card now. Rodrigo to Rashford, Cucurella to Dalot, Neco to Patterson, Firmino to Nunez. I mean, it's a great team. So when you go Rodrigo to Rashford, I guess my question is, what are you going to do with that? I also think you could probably go for Pickford as a keeper at this point in time. That prevents you from having that tough game where that Raya has. I think Raya plays City as well, right? So that's a tough game. Potentially you could go Pickford there. I would probably consider also thinking about, let's say, not sure about Patterson, but is Patterson back? I wasn't actually aware of that. Firmino to Nunez is a nice move. Look, I would actually co-sign most of these moves. I think Dalot's a great pick as well. So happy for you to go with that sort of selection for the wild card. I guess the one thing that's a little bit scary, right, is are we spending a little bit too much money on players that are not necessarily going to be playing consistently? I guess Almiron has already moved into a bracket where he's actually undersold by a lot of the algorithms. So I think Almiron's actually a great pick. And frankly, Newcastle 2 out of 3 games, you just need Andreas to cover for that last one. Yeah, honestly, this is a nice wild card actually. So very happy with it. If you make the moves that you suggested, of course. Hey, Fran, glad to see the stream back. Thank you. Glad to see you as well. Probably going to get rid of Martial this week. Well, you've kept Martial for a long time. 1.7 million in the bank, but unsure what to do. Look, first of all, I'd probably suggest maybe vice captaining someone else from a different team, but I can understand why you've gone for Foden. You probably are expecting that Foden starts, and therefore the vice should be fine. Look, 1.7 million in the bank. I think there's no real issues with your team. You could also go Zaha to Saka, but obviously you need to spend that transfer onto the forwards. Is Jesus one of the better forwards this week? I would say, I'd probably go for Wilson. I think Wilson's got a good game. He's got Aston Villa away from home. If you are tempted to play around with the card situation, then I'd probably go with Jesus, because obviously Jesus' ceiling is so incredibly high. So I would definitely force that move. Although I'm not sure if you can actually force. How much is Martial? He's quite cheap, isn't he? Apologies if I forgot Martial's price. No, 6.7. You can go for Jesus from that. Yeah, I'd probably just go for the Jesus punt. I think it makes more sense for your team. Salah or Haaland captaincy. I'll show my team very quickly. I've gone for a Salah captaincy myself, and I'm vice captaining Saka. So that's my situation. But going back to the Twitter, obviously he's thinking to get a -4 to get Saka for Zaha in, but don't think it's worth. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I don't think that's worth it. Hey, Fran, any thoughts on my squad? I think to captain Foden. Don't believe Salah more. Look, I think if you don't believe in Salah, completely understand why you'd like to captain Foden. I think Saka is a great option as well. If we're talking about fixtures, potentially Saka has a better one in my opinion. But the squad actually looks fantastic, so I've got no real issues with it. And the bench order actually looks very similar to mine. One free transfer for this team. So probably, I'd probably just suggest Saka or roll, frankly. Bowen to Saka. Saka's a very easy play to make this week, guys. If you are thinking about that move. Ryan Gold to Bailey to Saka, Bowen to Rashford, currently 90k. Awesome rank, Brandon. Kane captaincy, fair enough. Yeah, that's a very, very good pick. Love the Rashford punt as well. Bailey to Saka. I guess the one concern we have, right, is Perisic might not play, so the ceiling of Perisic is arguably a little bit lower, or potentially there's just higher variance, if we'd like to say that. But the team actually looks good, and I can understand obviously why you'd probably play Perisic regardless. Yeah, yeah, I agree with the moves. And good luck this week. So should I roll this week? You should roll this week for sure. I mean, I'm a little concerned. What do you mean by you should roll this week? Because you're saying that you should take a -4 to get Saka in for Zaha. What's the other move you'd be making? Or do you mean you should roll the hit if that's kind of what you're suggesting? Firmino to another 4 is the only move I can see. Absolutely, I think Jesus. If you're very interested in a punt, obviously you don't have Saka in your team, so I think it would make even more sense. As far as Firmino, look, I think rolling is not even a bad option. So that could work too. Have one free transfer, only 0.2 in the bank. Unsure which transfer would be better this week. Was thinking to roll. Yeah, I'd probably roll in this situation. I do think a lot of people, for example, like I had enough money in the bank to go Zaha to Saka, which made sense to me. But I think since you don't, there's really no reason to roll. The rest of your team actually looks fabulous. So yeah, I would roll. Just quickly going back on my team while I just answer some YouTube questions. My rank right now is 166,000 in the world, so I had a huge rank drop last week. So you can see here, I went from 38,000 to 166. Made a lot of moves that I regret. If you look at my transfer plans video, I talked about Ben White to Shar, Shar to Ben White, or making a move for Darwin plus Foden, that kind of hit scenario, and obviously it didn't work out the hit at all. It did give me Andreas points, but I would have got an Andreas point potentially anyways if I went for the Ben White move. The issue, of course, was I missed out on Kane and I missed out on, well, obviously the worst move I made last week was I went from a Haaland captaincy to a Salah captaincy, and that was a net -11 versus the world. So that was a huge rank drop specifically due to that move. And then the rest of the team, look, it wasn't exactly the best scenario, but at least I've got a strong team this week. I don't think many people have Darwin, so that's a nice little upgrade, I would say, over most of the playing population, as long as Darwin's able to do well. Is the upside enough to captain Haaland? What do you mean by the upside is enough to captain Haaland? Like, do you think Haaland's effective ownership is going to be low, or do you think that just the chance of missing out on Haaland starting um, represents upside? Play who, Andreas or Paris? I'd probably play Andreas, to be honest, Mosin. You're torn between Firmino to Jesus or Bowen to Rashford. I would go Bowen to Rashford, honestly, because Firmino is someone that you probably know will play couple minutes. Bowen, we're not really sure about that. Bowen doesn't even have a good fixture himself. Firmino actually has a good fixture, so even if he comes in 20-30 minutes, that's actually a lot better than Bowen coming into a United game. So that's kind of my opinion there. Why should I cap Haaland? He will come in the last 20 minutes. I didn't say you should captain Haaland. I don't know if he'll come in the last 20 minutes. I obviously don't know Pep, and I'm sure you don't know Pep either. So, look, I think the safest play is to actually put a captaincy on someone else, because you do run the risk, as you say rightly, obviously, that Haaland only plays 10-20 minutes, or even comes in at halftime potentially if something drastically happens versus Leicester. Do we expect team news on Man City? I don't think so, to be honest with you. We can have a look at Twitter. It doesn't really seem like many people are talking about serious news. So Buna's back already. Oh, this isn't Buna. Actually, I'm not even sure, to be honest. Yeah, we generally just don't have Haaland news, do we? This is just Buna, so don't trust this news. This is Buna, so he obviously he caught me earlier this week. Um, yeah, don't take into that. Hmm. Doesn't actually seem like we have news. to be honest. Yeah, I don't think we have any news whatsoever. So, what are you guys actually planning on putting in captaincy on? Let's actually make a poll. Um, Let me just make a poll quickly. I think, frankly, there's going to be four options. I think there's actually five options to be honest, right? Because it's going to be Haaland, Salah, Kane, Saka, and Foden. But I'm gonna put Saka here because I only have four options. So just let me guys know what your thoughts are on the captaincy. Tony versus Martinelli versus Bernardo Silva. I'd probably captain Tony. It seems like most people are still slamming the captaincy on Haaland, but there's a lot more debate towards that. The casual population will go for a Haaland captaincy. Um, let's see actually what the predicted lineups were for yesterday for City as well, because that could be quite helpful for us. Still seems like a lot of predictions going for a Haaland start, so that's actually quite concerning from that point of view. I might have to swap my captaincy to Haaland. Hmm. Should I do Robbo and Zaha to Trippier and Saka? Yeah, I think those are fantastic moves. Would you transfer Castagne and Gross to not much money in the bank, Gordon and White? I'm not a huge fan of the move towards Gordon, but if you can go Castagne to White, I think that's a great move. I don't think you need to go for the move to Gordon though. Yeah, that's a tough situation, right? Because a lot of people are predicting Haaland right now to actually start, and this was 17 hours ago. So, and we haven't had any updates since. So, I can't imagine the opinions of people here would have changed. Quicksilver, I think himself actually did predict that Haaland won't start. Apparently, we're going to get news about Haaland starting at 10:45. Um, do we have to just stay hovered around for team news and ticks? I think that's probably so. That's Bruno, of course. Literally getting baited right now. Yeah, 10:45 UK time. So if we actually wait 20 minutes, we'll definitely get the Haaland news. So that should be perfect. And then I think the question then is going to be whether we slam the captaincy on someone like Saka or Salah. Um, yeah. So those are some things to think about. Imagine it's not Haaland news. Yeah, man. If it's Leicester news, I think everyone's just gonna turn it off. Like, what is the Leicester news? Like, what that Vardy starts and maybe Doc is benched or vice versa. It's super boring. Salah, yeah, I thought Salah captaincy, right? But I as I said, I think you could go for a Salah captaincy. I think you can. If you have Kane, I'd definitely slam the captaincy on Kane. Yeah, Saka's my vice though. Salah's my captain. I think some people will go for a Darwin punt as well, specifically Darwin owners. Not many people do own Darwin. I own Darwin. I'd be tempted by a Darwin punt, but that kind of post shot in the championship is sort of forcing me to sell. So this guy actually has both the double wing backs, true FPL. It's actually a pretty nice squad, to be honest, because hopefully there are fixtures where you can play the double Tottenham defense. The issue is, though, like you now have the Liverpool game where you probably expect for them to concede. So I guess the ceiling of this Tottenham defense is actually rather low. So arguably they're now not so great picks. The actual midfield is fantastic though, and then obviously Solanke comes back, so you have a lot of depth there. So you don't really worry about that. Trippier and Cancelo obviously have great games, and then Guehi plus maybe one of the Spurs defenders will cover you for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, no real issues with this team. I do really like it. Is there more money in the bank? Because I'm just thinking this team doesn't actually have Salah, it doesn't have Kane either. So I'm just wondering how much money in the bank this team actually has. It's a curious one. I'm going to end the poll there because it seems like we kind of have a consensus of our opinions. Maybe some people will obviously think about captaining Foden, captaining Darwin. I personally think that all the options are available, so I'm tempted towards going for a Salah captaincy. I might switch it to Darwin last minute, but we'll see. Rashford or Eze, I'd probably go for Rashford, frankly. Trossard to Almiron, it's a tough move because I think Trossard actually has great fixtures the next 2 weeks. I probably wouldn't go for Trossard to Almiron. If you can play someone ahead of Trossard, maybe. I might even be tempted to play Trossard this week if I was a Trossard owner. I'd definitely like to keep him. Most likely to have clean sheet today, City or Liverpool. I think City actually has the best chances to keep a clean sheet. Would I take Firmino out for a hit? Absolutely not, Kyle. Unfortunately, I just don't think that the actual ceiling of the Firmino move is that great. As I was discussing, like 20 to 30 minutes of Firmino versus Nottingham Forest could mean he gets a goal, and that already kind of invalidates whatever transfer you're looking to make away from Firmino. Who to buy? Gabriel, White, or Shar? Look, I'd definitely buy White or Gabriel. I wouldn't buy Shar this week. Because I imagine you already have Trippier in your team. You might not have Pope as a keeper, but I don't think it's necessary to actually have Shar for now. So I'm looking to move out of Shar maybe to someone like Dunk so that I actually invest in the Brighton defense. Let's actually see, of course, how the Brighton defense perform. Because Brighton defense, if we look at their fixtures, are still very good on paper, right? Wolves seems like an opportunity to get a clean sheet. Aston Villa at home seems like an opportunity to get a clean sheet. So those are kind of my thoughts on defensive transfers, and I'd probably like to keep Saka over this run, unless I'd like to continue pivoting, because there is going to be a tough fixture where, specifically when Brighton play Aston Villa, Newcastle obviously play Chelsea, I'd probably only want 2 Newcastle defenders for that week, so I'm going to have to move away. Maybe it makes some sense to actually go for Shar to Ben White then, if I'm looking for a defensive transfer, because I still have the space to go for 3 Arsenal options. Who would you transfer Gross or Castagna to? Look, as I said, I would definitely go out of Castagna. I'd probably go to White. Ben Flogs. Hey, Fran, start Williams, Castagna, or Webster. I'd probably start Webster, if we're being honest. I think Chelsea have been the least attacking team between City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. So yeah, you look at the recent results, the actual goal scoring hasn't been high, the underlying numbers haven't been high. Liverpool actually has good underlying stats, and I think because Thiago is back, because you have Darwin starting as well, the actual impact of that suggests to me that Liverpool has got a high ceiling to score. And when you compare that to a Chelsea team that I think have been struggling because they've been also changing formations at times, getting used to the way that Potter wants to play, almost positionless, yeah, I'm not so sure that Chelsea can actually provide the best. So as I said, Webster is probably the best pick that you're forced to start with. Not ideal, but probably the best. What players you don't own are you excited about? Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So let's actually go through FPL and have a look. I would love to own Pickford, but I don't think keepers are really worth discussing. An Arsenal defender is always someone that I'm scared to not own. I think clearly Ben White is a good example of that last week. I'm not too worried about KDB, frankly, because I've got Foden. I'm definitely worried about Almiron. A lot of people have moved into Almiron this week, and look, honestly, like he's been so consistent the last few weeks. I think it's very hard to move away from him. I need to actually have a look at his underlying stats as well. Newcastle FPL. Let's quickly have a look at that. Yeah, I mean, Almiron's not particularly high in underlying stats, but actually the significant number is that he actually has 0.35 XG. So it suggests that he's not a creative player, but actually he's very, very close to goal scoring almost every game. He actually has higher XG than someone like a Martinelli, for example, in FPL. So Almiron's definitely someone that I'm worried about. Trossard, not so much because I don't think his ownership is particularly high, but I will be scared about Trossard in the next 2 weeks. Potentially, I could look for a move away from one of my Arsenal midfielders into someone like a Trossard. But I think Rashford equally is a great punt. I think Rashford is definitely someone I'd be scared about. I think Rashford's a fantastic pick. Just on the ball, how many shots he takes per game, he's very, very scary to actually watch. His ownership's not the highest because obviously when City had a poor run of games, when he was injured as well, and we had the suspensions, a lot of people sold Rashford then. So not many people do own Rashford now, but I think he's definitely someone I'd be just generally scared about. No one else here in the midfield really positions really scare me. In terms of the forwards, I'm always scared of Tony and Mitrovic. These are two people that are so consistent. Even though they have a City game in their kind of two out of three package, I still think those players are super scary. Potentially less scared of Mitrovic because I think 2 out of 3 of the fixtures are quite poor. I would keep Mitrovic this week and then probably transfer him out to someone else. Jesus is someone I'm always scared about. He doesn't actually always get the points in FPL, and a lot of people will suggest that he's an unclinical finisher. Maybe that's somewhat true, but I think still he produces so many chances week to week that it's very hard to watch his games, and that's pretty much it for FPL. Like for me, I'm not even too worried about the forwards, right? Because I have Darwin. I think that's a great punt there. Yes, of course, I'll be scared about Jesus ownership, but Jesus has also been sold quite a bit this week, which is interesting, I would say, to say the least. That just means I'm really scared of Mitrovic versus Everton this week. So that's the main concern there for myself. I have Andreas somewhat to cover. I don't think Andreas covering Mitrovic is actually true. It has been done several times, but also Mitrovic at the same time, very likely to get a penalty. The XG stats, even non-penalty XG stats for Mitrovic are fantastic. But the rest of my team, yeah, looks good. I think defensively, not too worried about Liverpool assets. Definitely worried about Arsenal assets. Actually, yeah, sorry. Dallo and Shaw are actually quite scary to watch as well. Kane, I would slam the captaincy on Kane to be honest over Saka. Thoughts on Dallo because I personally think Maguire will start and will cause trouble for United. That's an interesting question. I mean, maybe Maguire starts. I think he's preferred Lindelof though. No, do you not think Lindelof will play? Does Haaland play? We'll actually probably find out in 10 minutes, my friend. What do you think? Play Webster or transfer Ben White in? I'd transfer Ben White in. Any watch along this week? I might think about doing a watch along this week. Do you think maybe tomorrow I could do a watch along or even later today? I'm gonna miss out on the City game though, unfortunately, because I have to actually help out my wife with something today. Zachem, should I do -4 for Haaland? I would not go for Haaland to Alvarez because Haaland's probably only gonna miss one fixture, Zach. The -4 might not pay off. It might not be Alvarez who scores. You would lose the transfer value on Haaland as well. I would probably keep Haaland. Trossard or Guehi, first bench option for Haaland doesn't play. Already starting Anderson. I'd probably put Trossard. Webster, Ming, Webster for me actually. Webster for me. I think it's the home game. I think Brighton defense has been good. Chelsea attack haven't been great. If we look at underlying stats across the league, I don't know if you guys can actually see that as well as me, but Newcastle have been a top 3 team when it comes to offense lately, and they're neck and neck with a couple of teams, right? We expect Liverpool to be up there. Actually, you probably can't see very well, so let me just move that just a touch. Yeah, just so you guys can actually see some of the underlying statistics in the league, which I think is quite interesting. So if you look at expected goals, let's just quickly review that and just do a little bit of a team review for the next few minutes because we don't really have much to do until the Haaland news comes out. Potentially Haaland news, of course, we're not sure about that. But look, you've got a scenario where this Newcastle attack is fantastic. And then you look at a team like Chelsea, which obviously was plighted initially by Tuchel, but they're still struggling to create underlying numbers. And we can look at Chelsea's recent games if you guys want to, but I don't think it's actually necessary. I just think if you trust me, then I would say Newcastle is probably the team that I would back to score more consistently now than this Chelsea side. And that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in. Bowen to Saka. I'd probably go Bowen to Saka first. If you can afford Saka, which you obviously should because Bowen's, I think, more expensive than Saka. Rashford's a great punt this week if you're looking to, let's say, move away from Bowen, but you have Saka. But would I go from Bowen to Rashford as opposed to Saka? No, because I think the Saka game is just much better. Captaincy choice between Mo and Saka. Look, I've put the captaincy on Mo personally. Saka's struggling in the Premier League. What are your thoughts on Captain Nunez this week? It's interesting. Darwin to Kane for a hit is absolutely not something I would do. Frederick, I think Darwin's got a fantastic game himself. So, yeah. And then when we look at expected goals conceded, we can still see that Fulham, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, all the promoted clubs are up there. Everton have been overperforming very, very much. So when you actually look at goals allowed here, which is a great stat to compare that to, you can see that Everton have been highly overperforming their goals conceded. Whereas a team like Bournemouth, I think part and parcel to that is the Liverpool 9-0. But you can see that they are actually one of the worst defenses in the league. So when we talk about, let's say, great picks this week, I think Kane's still a fantastic shout. Yeah, Leicester is still a very poor team. Actually, Leicester initially were underperforming huge, but I think recently, obviously, the clean sheets have actually swayed things in the other direction. So Leicester will obviously start to now kind of average that out. Maybe playing City will change that dramatically again. So yeah, I mean, some unexpected names to see there. I would say Brentford and Crystal Palace being in the top half of some of the worst defensive teams is something we didn't expect. However, what that does provide is chances for keepers to get a lot of save points, which still allows for Raya and Guaita to get some massive hauls. We've even seen Ward have some great hauls. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything that you're a poor defense, right? Or you're only a keeper from a poor defense because the save points are so massive. And once you get that clean sheet, you're due for a 13-point haul. Whereas if you look at someone like Pope, and a lot of people have owned Pope, and Newcastle are arguably seen now as a top 4 defense, you're looking at a situation where Pope's ceiling is almost 6 points, whereas someone like Guaita, Henderson, or Ward could get 10 points. And we've seen a lot of consistent 8-point hauls from Ward as well. So a little bit of kind of interesting stat context there. Let's just change that back. Mo or Kane for captain. 5 minutes until Leicester news. Yeah, let's not hope for that, Henry. Come on, stop doing that. I would go for Kane captaincy if I had to choose between Kane or Mo. Start Tony or Mitrovic. I'd definitely start. I'd start Mitrovic. I mean, the Everton game looks better on paper. I mean, we just kind of discussed how Everton have been Wolves. Wolves have been so bad. Yeah, I'd probably start Tony actually. But why would you have to choose between the two? I guess we're looking for a transfer. Yeah, I'd probably actually play Tony. Those two fixtures back to back are hilariously good. How's it going, Tezza? Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Your team is the definition of all eggs in one basket. What do you mean, Newcastle defense? I can't really see how I have all eggs in one basket. Yes, obviously I have a triple up of City and triple up of Newcastle, but I can't see how they all come from the one basket. Because ultimately, when you look at, let's say, most of the competitive playing population, a lot of people own Pope and Trippier, so therefore Shar is the only differential there. Most people also own Almiron as well, so people do own triple Newcastle. When it comes to the rest of my team, I mean, okay, I have Liverpool attack, I have Arsenal attack, I have City attack. A lot of people own these players, the same sort of eggs. Definitely not one egg. And then Andreas is a variable pick with Solanke coming in next week, where Solanke has Leeds and Everton. So, what are my thoughts on Perisic? I actually think he's not going to start, so I would probably be a little bit wary towards starting Perisic on my team. I'd probably bench him. Perisic replacement. I think you've got a United defender as an option. You have one of the Arsenal defenders as an option. Try to think about which fixtures you need to cover, right? Because, for example, United and Everton actually have really good fixtures for all three games. But then if you look at a team like Arsenal, they have great fixtures, with exception to the Chelsea game. So have a look at your bench, have a look at your defensive players, and see if you're allowed to skip any fixtures. Because if you let's say don't need a defender for Gameweek 15, but only need a defender for Gameweek 14 and 16, then obviously Ben White's like a great pick, and Gabriel as well. So you have options there. Mitrovic to a 4.3 striker and Trossard to Saka for a -4. Michael, I wouldn't do that. I think Mitrovic has a great game himself. Sell Bowen for Saka to bench Almiron. I'd probably just play Almiron, to be honest. What's the need to necessarily go to Saka? Because if Bowen's fit, what you can do is keep Bowen for these two games, Crystal Palace and Leicester at home, fantastic fixtures, right? So, like for me, because Solanke is so terrible this week, and the ceiling is very low, and then Webster and Nico Williams have bad games, I definitely needed another playing player just to get Saka in. But I feel like you've got a scenario where you can play on their own. Start Trossard or Andreas. I'd probably start Andreas. Thoughts on Doherty and Tony? I think Doherty might not start, so that's my concern there. I don't really have any specific news on Tottenham, but that's the consensus. I think that Doherty and Perisic might be benched in place of Sessegnon and Emerson, just to allow for a rotation this week. Tony versus Wilson. I think Tony's got. I think Tony's actually. I think Tony's a lethal pick this week, but I think Wilson's at around the same level. I just think that actual Nottingham Forest game for Tony is going to be huge too. Bench order Webster versus Chelsea. And yeah, I think that's correct, Henry. Do you think Robertson will start? I do think so. Trossard or Mount, hard to choose. I'd probably pick Trossard. All right, so we're waiting for team news and ticks, aren't we? Oh, God. Why do I keep clicking on Buna's tweets? Oh, that's not Buna's tweets. All right, let's just refresh here, guys. See what's up. No news yet. Let's have a look at some tweets, though. Do you prefer Bailey to Martinelli or Solanke to Jesus? What are your thoughts on the Man City Ghostbusters post? I'll have to look at that. Was there some kind of good social media posting by the? Oh, he's done it on Instagram. All right, let's see what's going on here. Very confused. Do I have to follow him? Okay. Very interesting. Let me guys know when you guys see the leaks. I actually can't see the leaks myself. I mean, he says he's posted on Instagram, but I'm unaware as to the post is on Twitter. Yeah, the Ghostbusters post. Yeah, let's have a look at that. Oh, are you talking about the kind of talk about how whenever someone's featured for a social media post that he'll be starting? I mean, that's been debunked a lot of times, but if you're talking about like the comedic value of this one, I mean, fair enough. It's pretty good. I'm not exactly sure what it means. Like what's the relevance of ghost busting versus Leicester? Refresh Insta. Ah, man, you're right. It's just Leicester news. This is it's a depressing one, isn't it? He's making a joke here, guys. So don't trust that. Don't trust that. He's just referencing someone else's tweet because Buna's made the joke. Oh, we don't know if Haaland's gonna start. That's gonna be tough. my captaincy. I don't really know right now. Should I go for Darwin? Should I go for a Darwin captaincy? You only have players from 4 teams: Newcastle, City, Liverpool, or rest, and just budget. Haaland isn't playing. Well, if Haaland isn't playing, then surely I have players from 5 teams, right? Also, I literally have players from 6 teams, but that's fine. Um, should I start Mount or Andreas? I'd probably start Andreas. Bowen or Firmino to Darwin and Rashford for -4 and Captain Darwin. Um, Captain Darwin is a huge gamble there, so good luck to that. Also, I can't really understand the concept. Like, do you think that you should have an FPL team with 11 players from 11 teams, or what's the suggestion here with the eggs in basket concept? Because ultimately, the situation of FPL is that you have 4 to, let's say, 7 good teams in the league, maybe 8 now if you'd like to include, let's say, Brighton as well, that can consistently get points week on week. And there's nothing really wrong with actually picking players from the same teams, because you're expected that those eggs per se, such as City, such as Arsenal, such as Liverpool, will do the best each week because they're actually priced very well in FPL. The situation, of course, is when we looked at, for example, someone like Almiron, who's very, very cheap, he does allow you to get a very, very strong team while still actually getting all the assets that you'd like from teams like City and Arsenal. Now, obviously, I am missing out on options like Mitrovic and Tony. But this is just 1 week where I'm playing the Newcastle defense, because I am going to be playing Brighton defense in the future. I'll probably rotate Shar out, and I'll have Solanke coming back in. So that's going to be some more team variation, whatever that means. You should just be picking people who actually have the best fixtures. I would probably find that you'd struggle to argue that, let's say, Arsenal, City, and Liverpool have worse fixtures than anyone else this week. So yeah, whether I'm actually putting my eggs in one basket or not is a separate question, or potentially an irrelevant question when it comes to getting FPL points, right? Sell Foden for Saka now? No, absolutely not. I'd keep Foden. That's not actually. Do you guys? He's joking. He's joking. He's joking. Sam Martin just said no Haaland, no Foden. Oh, okay. This is depressing news. Because I thought team news and ticks was just referencing. Damn. I'm not going to take a hit out of Foden, but if Foden's benched, I might actually have to consider playing Solanke. So I'll have Webster and Solanke coming on. Do I take a hit? Probably not. I mean, if Foden doesn't play, it's obviously a bad fixture, so that's kind of the scenario that we find ourselves in. Yeah, I don't really want to deal with a hit for Foden, so that's actually quite rough. I think that means Foden's off the bench and then Haaland's coming on. So that means I have to play Webster, right? But do I play Webster or Solanke is the question. Because my concern, right, is that the Bournemouth manager did suggest that Solanke actually recovered quite well, so he is in place to start, but at the same time, he's still facing Tottenham defense, which doesn't really bode very well for either Webster or Solanke. So obviously, it's quite a rough bench this week. As it stands, I think my bench order is correct, though. I think I'd still back Webster to start, coming on for Haaland, and then I'd probably captain Salah, and then I would just have Darwin in my team. That's tough though with Foden. That actually makes it really sad that I went for Foden last week. Yeah, okay. Foden out to Almiron. Yeah, I love that move. Foden out to Saka. Fair enough. If you'd like to go for that, then Does this mean no captain on Haaland or Foden? I mean, I'm not captaining either of them personally, so I'm captaining Salah. I'm vicing Saka. Foden, yeah, the Foden transfer has looked absolutely shocking for me. Haaland out's interesting. I mean, obviously the huge punt is if you guys have one free transfer to go into Kane and then to go back into Haaland next week, if you'd like to do that. Um, if your team literally has no issues, I feel like it might be worth the play. Obviously, you lose probably 0.4 in team value, but does that really matter too much when you're getting points back? That's probably the argument that you'd have to kind of ask yourself whether you'd like to answer. I think the way things stand, I'm probably just gonna have Foden is. But I guess the question is Foden off the bench better than Solanke? And probably not, right? The problem with Solanke could also be someone coming off the bench. So yeah, I think I'm gonna keep my team as it is. Probably a bad Foden week, fine. Hopefully he can play versus Fulham. Hopefully he can play versus Brentford. And then Andres, I won't have cover for next week, but Solanke will come in. Webster can play obviously versus Wolves. Even Nico Williams has a decent fixture versus Brentford. Not that I've seen anything from Nottingham Forest, but yeah, that's a tough situation. Bench order for Solanke, Mings, and Webster. I'd probably play Webster, then I'd play Mings, then I'd play Solanke. Should I actually? I'd probably put Solanke over Mings. Should I bench Foden or Shaw? I'd definitely bench Foden at this point. I'd probably play Shaw actually. Look, Dallo has 4 yellow cards, but I think Dallo's the better pick. But if you are scared about yellow cards, then go for Shaw. That's kind of the argument. Who is the source for this? So we've got Sam Martin, who's kind of like an official leaker, and then we also have a reporter who's also suggested that Haaland's not going to play. Actually, I don't even know who this person specifically is, but that's interesting. Oh, this is a joke, isn't it? God, I'm an idiot. Um, hmm. I can't tell if these are references to. Oh wow, okay, we've actually pretty much had it confirmed. Okay, Haaland and Foden are not starting. Hmm. Yeah, Haaland and Foden are benched according to most sources. Dallo or Shaw is interesting. Yeah, team news and ticks is pretty spot on. I actually just thought he was making a joke because Buna, who obviously does unreliable news on usually, was suggesting that Haaland and Foden were benched. Start Guehi / Solanke over Foden. Look, it's tough, right? Because Solanke also is dealing with an injury situation, so I think I might just bank on Foden being an exceptional bench option. I think Haaland. I'm hoping that Haaland doesn't play in general, so that just means that Webster comes in, and I think I'm just gonna have to leave my team as is. I don't really want to take a hit because I can't see the point of taking the hit. Like Foden just still has good fixtures. It's tough. I mean, Almiron has a great game if you guys are really looking or desperately looking to move out of Foden. So that's one pick. Outside of Foden, I probably wouldn't go into Bernardo. That's going to be kind of pointless. And then Trossard, I wouldn't really pick him this week. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of managers who might go into Rashford as well. So Rashford is a great option. I think Rashford might be a better option than Anthony, frankly. So Rashford's a great pick. Almiron's a great pick. I think if you're looking for midfield transfers out, I wouldn't take a hit for them potentially. So kind of how I have to play it. We're starting Haaland, who could still come on and score. I mean, we don't even know if Haaland's actually in the squad, right? Because they're just suggesting that Haaland's not starting. It doesn't really necessarily mean that he's not in the lineup. I think he will be in the lineup, but I guess perhaps just giving more minutes to Grealish and Mahrez. We'll have probably Alvarez playing too. But Alvarez is such a tough punt, right? Because you're going to be moving from Haaland Alvarez, which I wouldn't really recommend. Oof. That's interesting. I think one thing you can argue as well is that the goal scoring ceiling when Grealish and Mahrez play is arguably quite low. So it might be interesting because it allows for Foden to come off the bench quite early. We have seen, for example, 45-minute substitutions specifically around players in Foden's position. So that's an option. I'd captain KDB though. You don't know who to cap between Saka or Salah. I'm captain Salah, but obviously, yeah, just keep it as it is. Most of the playing population is going to slam a Haaland captaincy down. Like, you have to think that there's still a lot of people in top ranks right now who will just be captaining Haaland, playing Foden as it is. I think at least putting Haaland on the field is a good hedge. But I'd like to probably move my captain. FPL crashed. Oh my god. I don't even... Is my team actually in the right position? No shot. What's going on? Oh man. Yeah, that's classic FPL, isn't it? So the website's crashed, guys. Oh, is it back? Okay, that's quick. I think my team's fine, right? It's back, but it's not really back. It's unavailable. Yo, we've got a little bit of debacle. It'd be interesting to see how people react to this. But the news is huge. I think I'll just play Foden as it is, and we'll call it a day. Is that Buddha? That's hilarious. Well, good luck, guys, honestly. I guess what crashed the site was probably a lot of people trying to make a move on Haaland and Foden. Is the app working? Let's quickly check. Oh man, it's too late. It's too late. Benzema out of Real Madrid training. That's a little bit depressing. Haaland is not starting, by the way. Haaland is not starting. That's the news that we've gotten so far. Can't bring in Rashford. Oh, that's rough. I'm sorry, guys. That's terrible. Yeah, Papu Gomez. That was a horrific tackle. But that usually actually happens when you're like a attacking player because the actual tackles that you go for are not like legal at all. Like you're not even thinking about protecting the other player. You're just kind of sticking your leg out because you're being an idiot. You captain Kane. Nah, I mean look, I captain Salah, so that's where I fell off last week. Let's be honest. Did not really enjoy a 400% rank drop. Probably could have. Basically, what that's taught me this season is that taking a hit was an idiotic move, and that was a lesson learned. But obviously, that doesn't always work out that way because sometimes your hits can pop off. Meanwhile, my hit for Foden has not worked out for consecutively 2 weeks, and maybe Darwin will not work out either. You captain Saka? Good luck, Rizal. Hope that actually works out quite well. The site crash is actually a little bit crazy. I think a lot of people will be complaining for sure. But that's why you should also get your team, 15 minutes earlier before the deadline, because we've seen that happen before, and there's no guarantees. All right. Anyways, though, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Good luck. I don't even know if you guys got your transfers through. Hope it works out, and yeah. All right. Take care, guys. As a left back, you've got a lot of studs in the leg. Yeah, that's horrific. So I was actually meant to play in a 5-a-side game today, but unfortunately, most people backed out. So it was good though because I got to do the live stream. But lovely seeing you guys here, of course. Nice to see you as well, V as well. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know if you guys have all captained a variety of picks. Who's actually still left the captaincy on Haaland? Yeah, Kane should actually be starting aluminium. Aluminium. I don't know. Whatever you guys like to pronounce. Whew. Salah captaincy. Captain Saka. A lot of captaincies from Saka. As a captain. Right, you're gonna send me a screenshot of that after the website loads, because I don't believe you. But if you do that, I respect you so much. All right, good luck. Kane captaincy, that's a fantastic captaincy, so well done for making that move. Let's hope for once in his FPL career in 22-23 that Salah gets us the much wanted haul that we've been kind of longing for. Whether that actually happens is another question. I think that's probably not going to happen. I already played my weekend league games today this week, so yeah, not much to do, but actually just enjoy my weekend and probably enjoy some football too. Zaha, I'm out on the field. Should I be? Nah, it should be fine. I don't really know why Foden's benched. Foden's playing. What do you mean? I can't believe that actually happened. You know what actually hurts the most is that actually hurts the active manager, the manager who actually makes decisions week on week, with as much information as possible, and that's quite sad. Um, Seems if Gueki gets a clean sheet, I mean, he very well could, right? The Southampton team is in particular. I mean, the casuals always win. I mean, that's probably that's another pick. Look, if I was the casual last week, I definitely would have won because I probably would have just rolled with a fantastically average team, and not suffered so much. But I think sometimes taking punts is good, right? Because a lot of people have a Haaland captaincy. Maybe their vice captain wasn't set up properly. Frankly, I don't even know people are even like continuously moving their vice all the time. I thought Pep loved Foden like a son. Pep actually loves. Do you remember when Pep said he could win with a team of like 11 Dantes? Can't trust Pep. Can't trust Pep. Casuals who got Son and didn't know he was benched and Hattrick off the bench. I mean, I actually know an act. I think Sonaldo, right? FPL Sonaldo actually still captained Son somehow, even despite knowing that he was most likely on the bench. Whether that's actually some divine intervention or I don't even know. But he did do that. That was one instance of a player that I actually saw who wasn't a casual who did that. I don't Liverpool against Leeds. You don't like Liverpool against Leeds? Look, if we don't like Liverpool against Leeds, and we don't like Liverpool in general, full stop. And maybe that's actually true. Maybe that's true because Liverpool have been terrible. But still, it is what it is. Um, hmm. Well, good that I actually made my move earlier. Bad that it was actually a bad move. I would have loved to go Foden to Saka. Don't rate Liverpool against Leeds. Leeds play style counter Liverpool to a certain extent. I mean, what do you mean by that, Brandon? Because I think I've watched plenty of. I don't think Leeds' play style counters Liverpool at all. I think Liverpool can easily score versus Leeds, but obviously that's up to it. Do you have Madison against? Do you have Madison at least against this weakened City side against informed Leicester? All about context. Um, I mean, I don't have Madison, but do you have Madison? I mean, would you say it's a weakened City side if two of their attackers change? I mean, why does City's attack impact Leicester's attack? Unless, because for example, like I would actually argue that okay, it might be a weakened side, but when you look at let's say Grealish playing, probably higher ball retention. Alvarez obviously maybe a little bit more erratic, potentially a little bit more displacing of possession. But I don't think it necessarily means it's a better Madison game. There's the latest TIFO video analyzing how Leeds play, and it seems that on paper it might work against Liverpool. The thing about this Leeds team though is we still see the kind of the drop off, right, every time in the second half. So if you watch this Leeds team play, the issue is they actually do incredibly well to start. So if you look at Leeds versus Arsenal, that was a very interesting instance of where I think Arsenal actually this season were comfortably the second best team. So I do think that there's an element to that, but the issue for me with this Leeds team is there's still very frequent collapses around the 65th minute where the work rate and the intensity drops, and they kind of struggle to actually play as consistent with the ball, because even though they create a lot of attacks in the second half, they're also very prone to being countered on that. And we know that this Liverpool team is still very fast, especially if Darwin plays. Um, and there's still a lot of mistakes in this Leeds team because we still have some defensive injuries, right? So that might be a concern. I got a Salah captaincy on. Hey, cute game. Hope you're doing well. Nice to actually have a little bit of kind of deload and a little bit of a talk. I still think it's a good Liverpool game. Does Darwin start this week? I bloody hope so. I've got Darwin. My captaincy is on Salah, but I think Darwin's a little bit of a punt for me this week. I have Foden, which is a little bit depressing. But Foden off the bench, hopefully he does something well. Yeah. Did we hear about Haaland? I missed the deadline. Fail. However, at Anfield, I think Liverpool sorted. Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like Liverpool at Anfield are almost like a mythical team. Um, no, I'm totally fine with the red arrows. They're my decisions, so I'm very happy to own up to them. It was a very bad week for me. I just wanted to go for a punt and didn't pay off. Was, but I think Liverpool should be doing well. I don't know if Liverpool have been necessarily been unlucky. I feel like there have been many times in history where, for example, we've been seeing this Liverpool team score within the last 10 or 5 minutes, and a lot of people would probably just suggest that that's because they were consistently building a lot of XG, building a lot of consistent chances, and it was well deserved. I remember, especially in the Zidane years, that Real Madrid was scoring very late in games, and it felt deserved at one point. It felt also unfortunate, I suppose, for opposing teams. Um, but I think Liverpool actually have been comfortably worse this season than in any year, with exception to maybe the injury year. But at least you had excuses for the injury year, right? Was really hoping Haaland would start because he's a home merchant. He only hauls at home. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second, Henry. Why do you think that the traditional FPL YouTubers such as Andy have not been doing very well this season? Well, I mean, simply for Andy, I think he's just been captaining Salah, right? There's nothing else to it. Do you mean FPL Mate as well? I mean, FPL Mate also, his decision to go Kane at the start was probably what bit him the most. Um, Technically, I would be doing good if I wasn't an idiot last week, but I was. So there's that. Raptor's absolutely killing it. Although I think Raptor's he's not a traditional FPL YouTuber, but he's been someone around the FPL circles and forums, and I think a lot of these FPL YouTubers rely on the same sources, right? People use Review for data, people use Mikhail Torvam's transfer algorithm, people use Twitter, Team News. I don't think substantially much has changed, but I do think that a lot of people have been caught up in captaining Salah a little bit. Specifically the older generation of YouTubers who have probably watched many, many years of Salah doing well and are reluctant to say that Salah versus Nottingham Forest is a bad fixture, right, for Salah. And frankly, I fell into that trap too myself last week. There was also another week previously where I captained Haaland. I think specifically, maybe the fixture, yes, when Haaland was playing Nottingham Forest, when I actually lost a lot of points against against the Haaland ownership there. That was kind of where I started to learn my lesson. But I think part of it too is just one or two picks, right? Because over the course of the season, when you own someone who does extremely well, such as, let's say, Saka when he did well versus Liverpool and Leeds, a lot of people binned him off then, but you just need those one or two picks to actually catapult you back into the good ranks. And someone like Andy has shown that he's very consistent year on year, where specifically on the back half of the season, he will make good decisions overall, and they will bear out to him getting a good rank. So I think Andy will be fine. I think Mate will be fine too. He's improved a lot as an FPL player, as far as I'm aware. I know a lot of people have been kind of scoffing at his rank history in the past, but I mean, he had a brilliant season last year, and I don't think, with exception to maybe the Haaland decision, which you could still argue is a 50-50 because Kane has been a great asset, has been terrible. So I think anyone in within like let's say the top 500k ranks right now. I mean, some people are going to be within the 800k to 1 million territory. I know Mark's having a terrible season, but those players still have the potential to go up towards the absolute top ranks. Um, yeah, I think last season I was looking at analysis of people who were within the top five in the world, and some of them weren't even starting the season within the top 100k. They were probably in something like the 200k trajectory. You can make momentous rank jumps, and I think that's just all about making good decisions. Haaland seems to be benched. Yes, that's correct. By City weekend, I mean they will struggle to score without their talisman and without an informed Leicester defense. They'll be looking to Grealish and Alvarez for goals today. I mean, I agree, but KDB is still there, and Mahrez is still there as well. So I think City will be fine. I just feel like it's just a bit of a reach to suggest that the City team is weak. I just think the City team, even their B team, is hilariously worlds apart from most of the Premier League teams. So that's kind of why I feel like he'll do well. Specifically City, I mean. FPL crashed as soon as my transfer. That's terrible, Diamond. I'm really sorry about that. As I was kind of saying to the chat, it probably makes sense to make moves within the last 10 minutes because we've seen many instances of crashes last year. I think last year during a blank game week, there was a crash as well. Is Cancelo bench? I don't think so. But I hear you out, Joblani. Because I mean, there have been many instances where specifically when Leicester parked the bus, specifically when they were playing kind of their three at the back formation, that City did struggle in the past. But obviously, the big change this year is Haaland being a talisman. I understand he can break the low block quite easily himself, and maybe you're suggesting that it's going to be tougher this week. I'm just saying that I still think the City team will actually control a lot of possession. So for me, the element of let's say how good City's attack is doesn't impact how easy it is for Leicester to get a cheese goal because it's still very hard to actually break into City's half or even get out of your own half when we're playing for City, whether Haaland plays or not. That's just my take, but completely understand what you're saying. Um, Even when you go back to the 05 Champions League, what happened at Anfield was downright bizarre. Yeah, I mean that was one of the craziest games, right? Well, at Madison's by differential, that would be awesome. Yeah. Kane, Hasek, and Haaland misses the penalty would be great. I mean, Haaland has to come on the field first, right, to do that. But Haaland getting 1 minute, a 1 minute cameo would be lovely. Got my transfer in before the deadline, then Perisic to White, hoping to get points off bench from Foden and Haaland. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be interesting. I want points off the bench from Foden and Haaland as well. But I don't really mind Webster playing in place of Haaland. I wouldn't mind Foden hauling though. That would be nice. I wouldn't really want Haaland to score because I don't have my captaincy on him. So yeah. Well, that was a lovely talk, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Let's see what happens, of course, in the City Liverpool Leicester game. We've talked about that quite a bit, as well as the Liverpool Leeds game. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful week and take care.